We've been spending a lot of time talking about what's happening at Maisonneuve-Rosemont Hospital, or maybe I should say what's not happening, and that is the government coming up with any kind of plan as to how they're going to fix the situation there. And then yesterday we find out that the government, after saying it was going to be too expensive a project at $300 and some odd, $75 million, decided no, they could free up about $85 million for what? For a parking lot. That's as far as they have gone. And of course, you can imagine a reaction to this. And by the way, pointing out rare that all the opposition parties in Quebec City got together yesterday to call the government out on this. Listen to this.
In a rare joint press conference, all three opposition parties and a group of hospital employees and patients say the announcement does not address the heart of the problem.
Nobody here this morning is satisfied with $85 million for a parking lot.
We're here because it's an emergency. Last week was an extremely close call.
Doctors, nurses, and staff say the hospital has been leaking water and is infested with vermin. Employees and opposition parties have been putting pressure on the government after it promised to begin repairs but delayed them, citing budgetary constraints. They say the government needs to come up with a complete plan.
That's it, a complete plan, which has not yet been presented, although I understand maybe we get some movement on this today. Trying to find out more, Dr. Marc Brosseau is critical care specialist and president of the Council of Physicians, Dentists, and Pharmacists, and is on the line. Dr. Brosseau, thank you for your time. I will point out, you were there along with those opposition leaders yesterday as well.
Yes, exactly. Because of the urgency of the situation, we drove up to Quebec City.
Now, with respect to a parking lot, and I know some people might be looking at this and thinking, how is this the most important thing to get done first? I think that's a fair question to ask. What are you asking the government to do here?
Well, we believe the need to reconstruct Maisonneuve is an emergency. I mean, you all saw the images last week with the thunderstorm and all the major issue with the hospital. The first phase is indeed to build a new parking lot because the new tower has to be built on the current parking. But this is clearly not enough to address the issues with Maisonneuve-Rosemont. It's a huge hospital. It covers 25% of the Montreal population with only 17% of the beds. It's affiliated with Université of Montréal with expertise in hemato-oncology, bone marrow transplant, kidney transplant. And there's some major issues with the current hospitalization towers, which also houses the critical care unit and the operating rooms. You mean the bricks outside are held with the metallic grid. There's multiple patients per room with no ventilation at all, which increases the risk of infection. And you've seen elevator dysfunction with firefighters coming in to take the staff out occasionally, and the major electric dysfunction, which was really put in evidence with the thunderstorm last week. So, I mean, this hospital cannot wait. It's an emergency. And even if the first phase is indeed to build a parking, as from the information we have right now as we're speaking, there's no clear plan in terms of what's going to go ahead. And we're afraid that the project would stall after the parking, which is the only first phase. We're asking the government to really plan the whole project so that it moves as quickly as possible to reflect the emergency of the situation.
You know, as I hear you describe the situation, for people who didn't know, and I should have mentioned perhaps the power failure last week where we actually had people, who had operations, surgeries going on, who had to be removed because the backup generator failed. As I hear you describe this, I think to myself, this sounds like a third world hospital, but it's a big Montreal hospital, which leads me to ask, how long has this been the case? How long has this been going on?
Well, I mean, I started working at Maisonneuve-Rosemont 7 years ago, and they were already discussing reconstructing the hospital. We just took back the Facebook group of the Coalition HMR, and it dates back from 10 years ago. This has been discussed a long while, and it's been delayed. There was a promise by the Christian Dubé to reconstruct the hospital starting in 2023. It was supposed to start last year. It's been delayed this year. And when it was delayed again, that's why we said that this can't go on forever. It's a major risk for the patients, and we started mobilizing a few weeks ago. And I think the thunderstorm just put what we were saying in evidence. I mean, there's some major issues here. What happened was that there was a generator malfunction, and we got really lucky. It was an extremely close call because it happened in the evening. So it happened between two surgeries. You can only imagine if it had happened during the daytime. It was basically a thunderstorm. If there were patients being operated on, there was no backup. The issue has been fixed with the generators. We wouldn't have started any ORs again if we knew that there was no backup. So that has been fixed since last week. But I mean, as the hospital grows older, these issues are going to pop out more often. So we want to make sure that the urgency of the situation is understood. And even though the parking is the first phase, there's an emergency here, and you need to act quickly in an emergency. That's the message we're we want to pass on to the government.
I thought I heard the Premier last week in reaction to the story, because it's now been going on for a while, suggest that, you know what, it's just a Montreal hospital and therefore not that important, and that's why the opposition is behind it, because it helps them. It's Montreal. It's not a hospital in the regions, for example. Although it's maybe important to mention that despite the fact it's a Montreal hospital, you serve people from around the province, do you not?
Yes, exactly. There's even a letter in the Journal de Montréal this morning from patients that come from all the regions over Quebec. Like Maisonneuve-Rosemont has an expertise in hemato-oncology, basically the treatment of leukemias and lymphomas. It's one of the major bone marrow transplant centers in the province. There's only the MUHE that does that in Montreal. Also, kidney transplant, same thing. The MUHE does that, and the CHUM. And you can imagine there's not a lot, if any, resiliency in the Montreal health system. I mean, if Maisonneuve has some major technical issues in the future, the MUHE and the CHUM can't absorb those types of expertise. And the high volume of patients, we cover 500,000 patients, a population of 500,000 in each Montreal. This volume of patients can't be absorbed by the hospitals around us. So it's a major hospital in the healthcare system, and we can't afford to wait until there's a catastrophe that needs patients to be redirected. And there's also some issues with staff retention. You can imagine with the environment we're working on, it's hard to retain nurses where they have brand new hospitals around in the suburbs in Montreal. So it's hard to attract and retain nurses. So we've had issues in the ICU of having to transport patients purely by lack of staff. And the recruitment is going to get harder as soon as the hospital is delayed for the reconstruction. People won't necessarily choose Maisonneuve-Rosemont as a first choice. Like I reassure you, I love working at Maisonneuve-Rosemont. The teams are great. You have many challenges with the patients that we're treating, but it's going to be hard as the hospital is further and further delayed to keep that level of attractiveness and expertise.
Just as a final question, I know everyone is demanding a plan, asking for a plan from the government. What has the government said?
Well, we're going to wait there's some details that are probably going to be coming out today with the cabinet meeting from the minister, so we're anxiously waiting for the details. With the 85 million that's been announced yesterday, basically it covers for the cost of the parking only. So we're waiting. Maisonneuve-Rosemont, the budget that's been planned by the Société Québécoise des Infrastructures to reconstruct it right now would cost around 5 billion. That's huge, but it's over a matter of 10 years, to reconstruct the hospital. So basically, it's going to cost hundreds of millions per year to start the project, and we're waiting to see what's going to be announced. We understand that the province is cash-strapped. There's a lot of emergencies elsewhere in the province, but what we've seen in Maisonneuve-Rosemont in the past few weeks with the water leaks, the electrical issues, the message is obvious to the population of Quebec. This hospital cannot wait. It is an emergency, just like a major leak in an underground tunnel. The government needs to act, even if it's a major project that's going to be expensive, and going step with baby steps like the parking only, and we wait and see. We're afraid that there might be some future events that could affect patient care in the future.
Dr. Brosseau, thank you for your time, and I think I speak on behalf of all Montrealers. We hope the government finally moves on this. It's long overdue. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your support.